Hi, I'm Vanessa Viccaria, aka The Math Guru, and you're listening to Math Therapy, a podcast that helps guests work through their math traumas one problem at a time. Whether you think you're a math person or not, you're about to find out that math people don't actually exist. But the scars that math class left on many of us definitely do. And don't worry, no calculators or actual math were involved in the making of this podcast. Guys, okay, today I have one of my best friends on the show. Sandra Birkett is the head of the English department at Toronto Prep School. She studied English literature, world religions, and cultural anthropology at McGill University and wrote her master's thesis at the University of Edinburgh on the connection between physical text and critical thinking. Sandra loves being a classroom teacher, and I can tell you guys firsthand that kids love having her as a teacher. She's a fan of cooking and sharing meals and great stories and big questions and long walks, but she is not a fan of math. So I initially asked Sandra to be on the show because she is one of those people that, like, when you mention math, she physically reacts. Like, you know that, like, I've just seen a ghost vibe? Like, she's like, oh my God, like her shoulders start, like, moving weird. It's a whole thing. But Sandra is also the best English teacher I know and is a huge role model for high school kids. So I wanted to talk to her about how being afraid of math affects her in a role where she's, like, constantly modeling for young people. And honestly, guys, our conversation shed some real light on just how valuable it can be to teach kids that you don't need to know everything, and that asking for help can be one of the smartest things you do. So, everyone, here's Sandra. Okay, welcome to Math Therapy.
Thank you. I need some.
Okay, so Sandra's on the podcast for a bunch of reasons, but one of the main ones is, I think, the really interesting intersection between being someone who self-admits as not being a math person, but also is one of, like, the best teachers on the planet ever. Like, you're going to be winning awards soon, right? Is there, like, a teacher's Oscars? There should be.
Yeah, I mean, you're setting that up, aren't you?
Yes, exactly. Right. Get your outfit ready.
I'm choosing my gown.
Okay, so why don't we just start with, like, do you consider yourself a math person?
No, the opposite. I consider myself someone who has always struggled with math, or maybe that's not true. I guess I was aware that I was struggling with math in middle school. I had a teacher who we'll probably speak about later.
Let's speak about it right now.
I'd like to make him famous. He was my mother. My mother still grinds her teeth when she thinks about him. I went to a school in New Jersey where you had the same teachers for 3 years. It was a chain school, and I had a wonderful English teacher and history teacher and science teacher, but I had this math teacher who just loved to intimidate people, and I think he created a lot of sort of what they call learned helplessness in me. And when we were talking about this podcast before and your subjects and that, and I thought, have I always been a person who struggled with math? And I really have no idea if I struggled with math before that. And I think what that means is that if I did struggle with math in elementary school, it had no emotional effect on me.
Right.
At all. Because I don't have...
That's actually like a huge deal.
Right. I don't have any memory of it before this teacher sort of crushed how I felt. So I guess the truth of it is, if I struggled with it before, it didn't really bother me to struggle.
Right. And which, that's actually interesting because, like, we struggle with a lot of things as kids, and, like, whatever, it's kind of like, cool, you struggle, you move on, but...
It took me a really long time to learn to tie my shoes, and that didn't bother me.
No, I'm really glad you brought that up. That's kind of one of the examples I use whenever kids are like, but math is so hard, and I'm like, wasn't tying your shoes hard?
Right.
But okay, so it's interesting because the reason I even started math therapy is because when people are doing poorly in math, they tend to have a very, like, visceral reaction to it. So, like you're saying, like, there was an emotional response, whereas, like, having trouble with other school subjects doesn't elicit the same response. So I want to go back to, you're kind of saying, like, whatever, I didn't have any sort of emotional response until this teacher. What did this teacher do?
It's hard to say. I wrote an open letter about it once. I'll let you read it as an example for a project that we were doing in class. And he would stand in front of the classroom and he would make like personal remarks. There was this kid, Jamal, who I remember was a really nice kid, but he was a really big kid. And I remember once the teacher offered him $1 for every pound that he lost.
Oh my God, what?
This is like grade 6, grade 7.
Is Jamal okay? Do we know anything about him now? That's traumatizing.
I don't know. I mean, it's the world of social media. I could probably find him. I do remember his last name. I think I have my grade 7 yearbook somewhere. But he... and he would just call people out, and and I was a bratty grade 7 and 8. I used to sit in the back of the classroom in my, like Death to the Pixies t-shirt and my black eyeliner, which I think I still have on today, and my hair in my face. But I didn't have like a universally difficult relationship with teachers. I had great relationships with other teachers, and and I did well in school, and so it was the kind of thing that struggling in one subject and being largely disinterested. I mean, it wasn't going to ruin the whole experience for me. I really, and as much as I don't think it's fair to put all the blame on him, I think he really stood there and would call me out when I think he knew I didn't know the answer, or I didn't know what I was doing. Right. I think there's a difference of I'm a classroom teacher, and sometimes a kid looks like they're totally on board to answer something, and then they say it, and it's boy, is it wrong. And there's ways to handle those situations that doesn't embarrass that kid, but also make sure the other kids don't pick up on that as the answer. And it's really not that hard to negotiate in a classroom. If you're intimidating kids and you're making them feel like crap, I don't know, in my experience, I think that you're meaning to.
Right. Well, actually, like, as a side note, why do you ever do that? Like, I find, like, I've had those teachers, I think we all have, who, like, specifically ask the kids who don't want to answer questions or who don't have the answers to answer. Like, why do they do that? Is it just an intimidation tactic?
I think so, and I think that you can create a whole different sort of vibe in your classroom where if you're really upfront about the fact that I can ask you to participate at any moment. Right. So, and I also open the door to, we have extra help every morning between 9 and 10. So I have a lot of kids who come in who know that my classroom is conversation-based and that nobody hides. And so with that in mind, a lot of kids will come in and say, can you take a look at, I did these 3, let's say, for argument's sake, questions for homework. If I were to only offer one, which would be the one, right? And so I offer those kind of things to come in. And so a kid will, I'll say, actually, you have great ideas everywhere, but this one, number 3, you've said something really interesting that I haven't heard before. Why don't you offer that up? Right? So you give them either ahead of time or in the moment. And I guess as a teacher, you become really sensitive to like facial expressions and even body language of whether they know it and they're maybe a bit shy, or it was a little early for them, or, that. And, but you also do tons of activities that get people loose and psyched and used to talking to each other and to you and that kind of thing. But to stand there and be like, Vanessa, I think you're doing it on purpose. Right. If you're, and then you have to, whatever your intention is going to be clear to them. I mean, I teach mostly grade 12, but when I was in grade 6, I was still aware of if a teacher was trying to draw me in or a teacher was trying to call me out.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I love that. That's a really big distinction. Okay. So having that experience with this teacher, so what kind of happened with math with you?
I don't know. I think that was sort of the end of it. I went to high school. I went to school in Toronto, and I had really good math teachers in high school. Ones that I really liked as people, and I had math classes that I enjoyed, but I never enjoyed the work. I never feel like I ever understood anything completely. I got, I think, a 50 in grade 12 math. We know that a 50 is a please go away and never come back. I took finite, which now is data management, when I was in grade 13, and I had such a nice teacher, Mr. Flanagan, and I remember he told me once, he's like, I don't think I've ever had a student who does their homework and gets it all wrong. And it wasn't for lack of trying. I just, I had no relationship with it, and I never wanted to do it. And even when I got an answer right, there was no sort of victory or high fives. It was more like, okay, great. Is that it? Do I never have to do that again? Right. Are we done with that now? And it was really largely in math. I mean, I was in other things. I was a normal teenager. I had other things going on in my life, but I liked school. I liked, in general. I took biology all the way up to OAC. I wasn't really all that good at it, but I liked it. I want to know about, like the animal kingdom and the world. And I got a little lost when it got really small inside the cells. It's like, I've lost interest now. But for the most part, I was an interested kid. And I just think that there was nothing in math that was interesting to me. And then when you couple that with a lack of confidence, and then you pile that on top of like a tendency to get frustrated and give up, it was just sort of the perfect storm.
Okay, so I kind of love the way you describe that, because I can see that all making sense as like the perfect recipe for you being like not feeling it. But knowing you now is really interesting, because so let's say, like, I mean, I know you pretty well, and it is definitely, you exhibit all symptoms of someone who gets anxious around math. So, like, when math is mentioned, I say this a lot, like, that many adults have, like, a visceral response, and, like, your body, like,
I start wearing my shoulders around my ears.
Yeah, like, there is, like, a weird twitch. So I'm curious how... because the way you're describing it actually seems quite, I'm using air quotes, but like normal, right? It's like you weren't really that interested. You had a lack of confidence. I mean, it makes a lot of sense that you now identify as someone who does not enjoy math or isn't good at math.
I think there are a lot of layers to this. I think one of them is that I'm a woman in education who's gone back and done several degrees, and then I still have this really nagging gap in my not just skill set but confidence that's so often thrown on to girls. Remember that Barbie that came out years ago that was like, math is hard. To think that so maybe there's an element of embarrassment in there, that this is so challenging for me, and that again, my job is to stand in front of a group of awesome young people and not just give them what I've got, but more importantly, draw out what they have, right? And to not take that kind of talk from them of, I'm not this kind of person, or I don't like this, or, and I consider it, amazing victories when people come in and they make it's like day one of the poetry unit face. And at the end of the year, I always ask, I was like, what was your favorite thing that we did this year? And I love when kids who made that face, like, I really liked the poetry we did, and I have to like swallow my smugness. But it's tricky to be a person who considers themselves, a pretty functioning adult, right? Who still has to, double check the math on their taxes.
I wanna talk about this for a second, actually, because this is, again, like, such a big reason why I started this is I know many, including yourself, super intelligent and functioning adults who carry around this like little piece of inability, right? Mm-hmm. Or like learned helplessness is a really good way to put it, like, as you said. And I'm curious how that's affected you in ways other than math, because it's funny, like when I asked the question at the beginning, when I said, are you a math person? And right away you were like, no. But like now you're kind of saying like you don't tolerate that talk from younger people. And I feel a part of you knows that's not true. You know that it's, as you said, a result of this perfect storm.
It is and it isn't. In the sense that...
like, do you really believe you are like incapable of doing math?
No, and there's been times that I've joked even with you that now, as an adult, maybe now I'm ready to learn calculus and I wasn't at 17, and maybe that's fair. But there's a part of me that is... I'm amazingly slow and inefficient at understanding, not even learning, but understanding basic concepts of math. When I do my medians for midterms and finals, I have to still write them all in a line and cross them off towards the middle because I can't use Excel I can't trust myself with Excel, because every time I try to use it, I do something wrong and then everything is wrong and I don't know how to reverse engineer what I've done. You're laughing, but I was actually deemed untrainable on Excel once by an Excel instructor. My boss, who's a fabulous principal and a math teacher and a teacher of all kinds of things, he said to me, and he's not being mean. I mean, I think he was just being observant, that I have some of the worst mental math he's seen in a smart person. And he checks all my medians, and he's so sweet because I always get them right because I do them so many times that I don't trust myself.
Right.
When you're breaking down the marks for your kids, before you start teaching the course of, okay, how many tests are we going to have and how many assignments are we going to have, and like how am I going to come to this mark that they get at the end of the semester. It's incredible how long it takes me to do that. right? To understand what I noticed. I had a great math teacher in grade 11, and she was trying to figure out why I was so slow to remember the next day what we'd done the day before. And she taught me how to knit. And it was really interesting when we sat there and she watched me knit for about half an hour. And one of the things she said to me was that I wasn't getting any faster. I wasn't creating these sequences.
Interesting.
Whereas when people knit, you know, when you watch people knit, you're sitting on the plane and there's someone just sort of passing time by knitting. I mean, exactly, is that I wasn't creating it. And even though it's with your fingers as opposed to your brain, and she was saying, I think that's a lot what's going on, you know, with equations and with that, even, you know, I'm sure you spend a lot of time with kids talking about things like bed mass, that I was not creating these memories of sequences of how to do things in order. And what's funny is that, you know, you say, how does this affect the rest of your life? I mean, I see it in a lot of things that I do. Even I love cooking, but baking is a real challenge for me because baking is so exact and it has to be done in this particular order. Whereas with cooking, you can back up out of things, you can change direction, you can fix stuff that you've, you know, perhaps skipped a step. So I do like what she noticed. I do see the effects of that, right? And I think that, you know, I wouldn't take away the fact that I have a lot of where this anxiety comes from is low self-confidence and you know, nervousness. But I've seen a lot of evidence that I do struggle with this. Right? And, you know, when people explain things in new concepts, even using computer programs to do the work for you, I can't sort of get to where everybody else seems to get so quickly, that's just how that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because I mean, I think we all have things like that, right? Like, right. I definitely, there are things I go into where I'm like, okay, I'm going to be bad at this. Like, I do this with music all the time in my band. Like, you know, like, someone will be like, okay, we're just going to jam this new song, and right away I'll be like, okay, but you know I'm bad at, like, hearing keys. Like, I need it written down. Like, you know, and David will often be like, okay, I'm like, just, why don't you just try? And I'll be like, but I'm bad at it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so, and then often I will try and it will be easier than I anticipated. And often I'll try and immediately I'll start like sweating and fucking the whole thing up. Like, you know, just as like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. So like, I mean, and I don't want to dissect this whole thing now, but I really do wonder, like, as you're saying this, like how much of it is like, you do just start getting frazzled from the get-go because you've already decided, like, I struggle in this is the situation I struggle in.
Oh, totally. Right? But like, I have had, you know, moments in my life where I haven't been under any kind of pressure. I've been with people I really trust. There's a friend of mine who I've taught at in a couple schools before this one, who I called up to my classroom when we changed something with how we were going to organize, not the collection of marks, but the sort of demonstration of them. We had to go show our boss, and she was great, and she's so gentle and she's so sweet, and she came up and she explained everything. So I felt no anxiety being looking like an idiot in front of her. Yeah. And even still, it was amazing how long. I mean, I was watching myself go, like, you know, through molasses to the understanding of this. And she was very, very patient because, you know, well, she's a teacher. She's seen this before. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I kind of like, so again, like, I'm just thinking about myself and the things I struggle with. Like, I've always, I mean, I haven't always. I think I've just started to come to realize that it's kind of a cool thing. Like, you know, like, so I don't understand, like, I can't, like, immediately jam like every other musician. I need chords written down in order to, like, make sense of them. I need to see them visually. But that just means over the years I've learned that, and now I write everything down, and then I can learn things a lot faster. Or like, you know, it's made me definitely learn a lot of the ways I do work in, as opposed to focusing on the ways that I don't. And I really like what you had said earlier when we were chatting about it kind of being totally cool to just like recognize that and work with it. Can you say something about that? Because I feel like a lot of people see, like, what you're saying right now, like, you're saying it with a confidence and just sort of like a matter of factedness, instead of being like, ugh, like, I'm just so slow. You're like, no, I'm just, this is what happens when I do this. Like, you know, so, and instead of saying it with this sort of like air of like regret, which is what most people carry with them, which is what leads to the trauma, right? Like around math, instead of sort of just being like, and I will just say this one last thing before I actually like ask you the question, but like, because I'll hear a lot of parents and students often say, I'm really bad at math because of this. Like, because I have to work hard, or because I'm bad at mental math, or because I can't remember formulas. And I'm always like, none of those things make you bad at math. Those are just random facts. Like,
Sure.
You can still enjoy math, you can still be good at it, you can still get answers to questions without, like, memorizing your times tables, although everyone should learn their times tables, or like without like memorizing formulas. So all these kind of like caveats people put in place as to whether or not they're intelligent, right? Like, I'm not smart because I can't do this or that. Mm-hmm. So like, I like your approach to it. So tell me like a bit about that.
I think that over the years, I mean, there were times, I'm sure when I was a teenager, that I pushed it sort of to the front of my identity and wore it a bit like armor of, yeah, well, I'm just, real crap at this. But I, like most people, grew up, and now, upon reflection, it's actually in some ways been really helpful, because it's allowed me to become really comfortable with asking for help.
Right? I love that.
With anything, with, even, I was saying to someone the other day about how much I love my butcher, and this is such a weird example, but I was cooking something I'd never done before. And I went up and I said, excuse me, I have a question. And this guy could not have been more psyched to explain something to me. He put down everything he was doing, took off his gloves, wrote down everything he was saying, gave me his grandmother's recipe for a sauce.
Who is your butcher?
I know, right?
Yeah.
I think that it's such a great gift to be able to say, I don't know what I'm doing, or I think I need a little help with this. And when I bought my condo, I have this lovely lawyer, and we sat in his office and we signed all the paperwork. And I said, okay, wow, this is really challenging. And he had just bought a house the year before, and he was so nice about it. He's like, yeah, this is the form I found a little tricky too. And he came and sat on the side with me and was so much more sympathetic and helpful. And as soon as people realize that what you're asking for is help, a huge percentage of them like open up and become like slower with their descriptions and check your understanding of things. And maybe because I'm a teacher, like I recognize when other people can even take that role for a second. Right? And I think that like everybody is a teacher. Right?
Oh my God, I love this.
Right? And so if you've struggled with something and you're aware of it, and you can drop a little bit of that sort of, well, because I struggle with this, it's not in my life at all. Because one of the things that we were talking about, how just because I'm not a math person doesn't mean it's an excuse for anything, is that can you imagine if I wanted to, start a company and be like, oh, well, too bad, right? Because I'm not great at accounting. It's like, no, I would have to either partner with someone who that was an area of strength. I would have to outsource that, which means I would have to budget for outsourcing that, or all these things. It's not an excuse.
I really like that idea of like, it's almost like an extra superpower to know when something isn't your strength, right? Like, it's actually like, I think about this in the business that I run, like, there were tons of times when I've sort of been like, oh, like I suck at this or I suck at that. But what it's made me do over the years is just like outsource, right? I'm like, I really like...
Or learn. Because if you're going to outsource properly, you still have to get, like, not halfway necessarily, but you still have to get there yourself because you have to know what you need.
I mean, I guess I feel like I've outsourced to the double outsource. Like, I have somebody who tells me what I need, and then that person outsources. But I mean...
There's a whole cottage industry that has popped up to support the math guru.
But it is... The point is, I think, is there's so many ways to do something. I could learn it myself. I'm not saying I can't, but I've chosen in many ways to be like, I really hate this. I hate dealing with like technology. I hate it so much. I hate trying to figure out what printer is best. I just want someone to do it for me. And rather than feeling like, ugh, I'm so bad at this and I'm so incompetent and I can't take care of myself, I'm like, no, I'm taking care of myself by recognizing that someone else can do it better.
Yep.
Okay, so wow, there's so much awesome stuff here. I actually wanted to ask you how you kind of incorporate this into your teaching. Like, not just with math, but I mean, education aside, like even thinking about mental health. And like one of the biggest barriers to overcoming struggles with mental health or with anxiety or with anything school related is being able to ask for help. And I think a lot of teenagers struggle with that, a lot of kids as well.
Sure.
What do you see that in your classroom, and how do you overcome that?
There's a lot of places I can go with this. One is that I work for a school that extra help is the norm, not the exception.
Yeah, I love that.
So not only is it scheduled into our day, it's in the vibe of the classroom, right? So kids who join us later, in grade 10 or 11 and 12, it takes them a couple weeks to sort of recognize that, oh, this is the culture here, and that if you're sitting there quietly, keeping your questions to yourself, well, that's not going to last long. Right? And that's so, I mean, but
I like that. It's like built into the educational structure.
And the idea that everybody needs it, right?
Kind of like everyone needs a therapist vibe.
Well, sure.
But you know what I mean? How that's kind of stigmatized as something that like only certain people ask for. Same with extra help. Same with putting your hand up and asking a question. Like even as adults, like you go to a lecture and people are scared to ask stuff.
I know.
But I like that idea that it is like the norm.
Oh, it's totally the norm. But the other side is that one, I think teachers who have never struggled at all have maybe a little bit of trouble relating to a kid who is struggling. And, there's kids who, have all kinds of obstacles in the classroom, and some of them are just like a tendency towards boredom or, huge active social lives that, they're not really interested in what's going on at the front of the class because there's 15 things that are happening on their phone at the same time. But the one that we're really talking about is this idea of sort of anxiety over not getting it. And I think one of the biggest problems right now is that there's so much expectation of success on people, right? That if you are not getting a 95, you're not getting it, right? And I think that needs to roll back a little bit and to say that if I'd gotten a 70 in grade 12 English, I would have felt like I'd won some kind of national award. You know what I mean?
Well, mathematically, knowing 95% of something is a ridiculous expectation for every single person to have.
I know. And so this idea that, because I've seen kids who crawl up in progress with every activity and everything that you do, and they'll start a class with, getting 60s, and 3 weeks in, be disappointed when they're getting a 72 on something. But I'm really trying. And I said, yes, and look what's happening. And because there's this expectation that something is going to snap into place and then all of a sudden they're going to be Rhodes Scholars. And that's coming from a much larger culture than just inside a classroom or a school or a city. But I think that's something as educators that we have to tackle, this idea that of perfectionism. And that's where not all, and not even most, but a great deal of the anxiety in the classroom comes from, is that I've had kids, and I teach humanities and social science classes, where I've almost had to wrestle papers in from people who are like, it's not perfect, it's not perfect, it's not perfect. And I said, well, it never will be, because that doesn't exist. Right? Are you ready to hand it in?
Right.
Well, and also because it was due 3 minutes ago, so you are ready to hand it. It has to come in now. Right? And that... we work really hard in English to say that this is the best essay I've ever written.
Right.
Which is an amazing goal. Not this is the best essay anyone's ever written or this is perfect, but to say this is my best work.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what feels really good to say out loud. Right? And I'm sure it's the same in math. To be like, that's the best I can do right now. And if it was better than yesterday, then everything is going in the right direction.
I love that. I love it, and quite frankly, I never hear that because I always, and I'm sure you hear this as a teacher too, like people are constantly comparing themselves to others, right? So it's always like, I actually very rarely hear that was the best I could do. I hear I did the best in the class, right? Which is, that's problematic in and of itself.
We've all had quizzes where the best in the class was still pretty embarrassing.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? That's not a statement that means anything.
No, I think that is it. That's really important. Like, we always say like progress over perfection. It's like this ridiculous like Instagram hashtag, but like nobody really embodies that or like, takes that to heart. Okay, well, I love that. And so now I'm going to ask you the 2 questions I ask everyone.
All right.
Okay, if you could change one thing about the way math is taught, what would it be?
The relevance of what you're doing. I spent so much of my life in math classes sitting there, and like I said, even getting questions right or following the steps. But there was sort of a Sisyphean nature to it. If I'm just rolling this rock up this hill, like I, you know what I mean? So what am I doing? Right? And for what? You got the answer right. It was -3. Terrific. Like -3. Like, there was no payoff to me. There was, and that's why I think when I took what they call data management now, at least it was connected to the real world. I didn't really do all that well in it, but there was this idea of, what can you solve this problem? Which is why, I teach social science courses, and the statistics to even teaching kids how to look at numbers. And it says that, 4 out of 5 dentists recommend, well, what does that mean? And then that I like doing, but so much of the, calculus directed stuff, like the trigonometry and solve for X. One of my favorite little cartoons ever was find X, and you're like, it's right there. Because like
you look so happy right now.
For what? For what? What did finding X do for me? For the world? What did
It could do a lot.
But that's the thing. So how do you cross that gaping hole for kids who found X?
Yeah.
Be like, well, what would you like me to do with it now that I have it? It's like hide and seek, right? I found you. What am I going to do with you?
For all those kids out there that have found X.
over and over and over again. Okay. So what? Yeah. Because there are kids for sure who love the puzzle nature of it.
Yeah.
You get the payoff from just getting the answer right, because they're satisfied by the process. There's still a huge percentage of them who aren't, and you're going to lose them. Mm-hmm. My friend, who Anna, who teaches math, and Anna was someone who got 100 in high school calculus and studied pure math at university. She said her favorite math class to teach is the grade 11 applied, because those are the kids who've always struggled in math, and then you give them all these really workable, relatable stuff. She said that she gave them her student loan remainder.
You're like, have fun, kids,
and said, no, but I figure out, give me 2 plans to pay it off quickly, and then what that would mean for the life I need to lead for 5 years, or to pay it off slowly.
I love that.
And they spent the whole period working it out, and they presented her at the end 2 different lifestyle plans, basically, of if she wanted to go free in 5 years, or if she wanted to do other things. And she said they look so proud of themselves. And
well, no, that is amazing. And for sure, I think it's insane that grade 11 applied math is the only math where you learn life skills with
right
math. Anyways, that's a whole other discussion. Next question. What would you say to someone who comes up to you and says, I'm just not a math person?
Well, how old is that person?
Does it matter?
Yeah, because if they're a teenager in my care, I think I would say maybe you haven't had an opportunity, right, for that not necessarily to be true. Because I've seen kids who at 14 called themselves not a math person, and under different circumstances, maybe just even years of maturity, or the right teacher, or the right school, or even the right kind of classroom environment, change their mind. Right? Completely. So I don't think there's just a straight answer to that. Sorry.
It's math. There's always a right or wrong. I'm kidding. Okay.
Which is why I teach English.
Well, thank you so much. This has been, honestly, a really, really amazing discussion. I'm sure everyone would agree that you should probably just have your own podcast, because I could just listen to you talk forever. So at this point, I always give someone a prescription as your math therapist. So I think what would be really cool, if you're down for it, is you said you wrote an open letter.
Yeah.
And what was it about?
That teacher.
Would you be open to us taking a video of you reading your open letter out loud for everyone?
Sure.
I would love that. I think it'd be really good for everyone to hear, and just to visually see you reading it. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I feel better already.
Oh my God, so do I. Ugh, I just love talking to Sandra, because it's every sentence that comes out of her mouth is the wisest thing anyone has ever said. I really, really love the idea that asking for help is your biggest strength, not your greatest weakness. And honestly, I encourage you guys to write down 5 things that you struggle with, or don't love, or simply need help doing, and then to get help doing them. That can mean hiring someone, asking a friend, or simply setting aside the time to learn more about whatever it is you don't know and you feel you need help with. For me, I found that just writing them down gave me permission to stop feeling bad about needing help. Cool, we can all just admit that I don't know how to use Google Drive, and I can just stop getting frustrated every time I prove yet again that I can't use it, and I can just ask David, aka our podcast editor, to teach me how to use it once and for all. Cool, fine, I'll do it. Okay, so I know you all want to see Sandra's open letter, which we prescribed her, and you can. Go check that out on our website, where we put all of our show notes and extra episode-related content. themathguru.ca/maththerapy. Remember also to follow us on social media at The Math Guru because we'll post a ton of stuff there every week. And of course, a reminder that Math Therapy is hosted by me, Vanessa Vicaria, produced by Sabina Wex, and edited by David Kochberg, aka my new Google Drive tutor. And our theme song is Waves by Goodnight Sunrise, my band. And guys, if you know someone who needs math therapy or needs to hear someone getting math therapy, please share this podcast and write us a quick review on iTunes or the podcast app. Those two things actually make such a difference. I'm determined to change the culture surrounding math because it sucks right now, and I need your help, so please spread the word. That's all for this week. Stay tuned for our next episode out next Thursday.